Welcome everyone to my channel. Today I present to you the third of several backstories based on the camping nightmare Lost in the Woods, the story I wrote that featured Cyrus the Bigfoot. These stories will round out what you know about Cyrus' life from the perspective of each character and add depth to him. There's so much we don't know about these creatures in real life. So this series is intended to let our imagination see things from their perspective, and just maybe, how they might perceive life and our world we share. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification, share, and give this a thumbs up. Please enjoy the first part of Thadon, Cyrus' friend and foe, as we get right into it. My name is Thadon, and many of you know me because of what Cyrus has said. However, there is much more to my story than what you've been told. I will tell you what led up to the event Cyrus has told you, and the events that happened after I was banished. My family is from the mountains of rocks, past the far span of land that separates the mountain of banishment. They traveled over to the mountain of clouds and trees before I was born. I was born 800 moons ago. My father's name is Felix, and he is a respected older male in the territory. Cyrus' father Yunan was leader over the whole territory and had great influence in the neighboring territory we lived in. He was very strict and basically ran things in our territory with his iron fist. One day, I was out playing with some other young ones, including Cyrus, when we came across a small human dwelling. It looked like no human had lived in it for many, many moons. So we explored inside it. We found many little human tools and other things that we didn't know what they were. I brought some back to my dwelling to play with them. I kept them hid for several moons until my father saw one under my bedding. He pulled them all out and confronted me. He demanded to know how and why I had them. I told him what we had done, and he was furious. He told me I was to never go back to that place, and he took what I brought back and destroyed them. I was so irritated because I felt he overreacted so bad. I had no choice, though, but to grin and bear it, because I was still so young. When I was about 300 moons old, or 300 days old, as humans would call it, I was allowed to follow behind a group of males that were hunting. My father was among them, as was Cyrus and his brother Zenik. Zenik was old enough to hunt, but Cyrus and I were not. After 2 or 3 moons out on the hunt, one of the males reported that we were getting too close to a human dwelling. So they decided to change course and go a different direction. I followed along, but only for a few paces. I decided I wanted to see what humans were all about. So I went back and found the human dwelling. It was large and tall, and they had their own small lake behind it, with strange-looking trees around the little lake that they have sitting stumps under. It was all so fascinating to me. I got closer to the dwelling and eventually went right up to it. Humans are strange because they have holes in their dwelling that you can look through. So I peeked into one of those holes and could see humans sitting inside, looking at something flashing. It was almost like a tiny moon was inside their dwelling, and they were just staring at it. I stayed watching them for several minutes, until a small female turned towards me and screamed. She saw me. I was terrified, because I didn't know what they would do. So I ran as fast as I could and hid behind a tree. Just as I got behind the tree, I could hear them making noises, and several males came out of the dwelling and started looking around. If I ran, they would see me, and if I tried climbing the tree, they might hear me. Suddenly, a large hand grabs me by the shoulder and hoists me up quickly into the tree. A hand goes over my mouth. and my father whispers to not make a sound. He keeps hold of me until the humans go back inside their dwelling. He leaps to another tree and climbs down out of sight, and we return to the hunting group in silence. After we get there, he tells Yunin what happened, and Yunin reminds him that it was against the law of the forest to do what I did. He did take into account how young I was, and my father only reprimanded me. He and I traveled back to our den and waited until the others returned. I managed to stay out of trouble for a while, but all that changed about 100 moons after the incident I just told you about. I was now able to hunt on my own. Cyrus was my best friend, and as you can tell, we went everywhere together. This time, though, I went hunting alone. After being out for 2 moons, it was dark time when I came across a human dwelling that had vines on poles all around it. Inside those areas were cows and goats. I felt like it was too good to be true. At this point, I was among the tallest of the young males. I was already 8 heads high and still growing. So I just jumped over the vines and went right up and grabbed a goat and ended it. I ate some and then brought the rest of the meat back to my family unit. Mother asked me how I was able to find a goat. She said it had been years since they found one. I said that I came across a herd of them and managed to grab one. She was surprised but happy. So was my father. It made me feel good to finally do something to please him. I went hunting again 5 moons later, and this time my father said he would like to come along to see where the goats reside. I quickly told him that I enjoyed the time to myself and would prefer to go alone. He respected that, as he also enjoyed hunting alone from time to time. So I made my way back to the place where the goats and cows were. This time it was during the day. I didn't see any humans out and didn't smell them either. So I jumped over the vine barrier again and grabbed another goat. This time I just took the whole goat with me and ended it on the way back home. I did this off and on for nearly 50 moons. Things took a terrible turn one night though. I went back once again to the same place, and this time something was different. There were little lights up all around the vine barriers. I knew I needed to be careful because the humans might see me, but I was addicted to getting this easy meat and bringing it back to my family. So I decided to risk it. I jumped over the vines again, but this time they were higher. It was more difficult, but I made it. The vines on top had thorns on them and could hurt me some. As I went over to grab another goat, I froze in my tracks. In front of me, about 20 paces, was a human. He had his back to me, but he quickly figured out I was behind him. The cows went crazy like normal, and goats started going in circles. He turned around and saw me. I had nowhere to go. He looked stunned. I did the only thing I could do, and that was charge at him and hit him. He flew to the side and landed about 3 paces away. I didn't hit him hard, just enough to knock him down and stun him. As he was down, I went ahead and grabbed another goat and made my way back to the vine barrier to jump it. As I was running, the human yelled and several more humans came out of their dwelling. They had metal weapons that bite. I ended the goat and threw it over the vines, and I went to leap over it. However, I didn't jump high enough, and the thorns snagged my leg. I ripped the vines down, and they were on my leg. I ripped them off while I yelled out in pain. As I was getting up to grab the goat, one of the humans used the metal weapon. Thankfully, it didn't bite me. So I ran as fast as possible to get away from them and made it back to my den. I dropped the goat along the way, but was relieved that the humans were long behind me. I decided it was too risky to keep it up, but my relief was quickly destroyed when I heard the sound of humans in the distance. My father ran in and said that humans were near and we needed to get out of here. Before we could even run, the humans started using their metal weapons, and they bit several males who tried to lead them away. 2 of them were ended. My mother was running across the dwelling place to my den to get me and run when she was bit by the metal weapon. She fell to the ground, injured and bleeding. My father ran to her and grabbed her and yelled for me to run and follow. I was so sick thinking about what I had done. We ran all the way to Yunan's family group and their territory to be safe. After we got there, my father told Yunan about everything that happened, and Yunan felt like something spurred them to come and find us. The older males from our territory had no idea and said it was all so sudden. They met together at the meeting tree to try and recount what led up to it and see what could be changed so it didn't happen again. I went to Cyrus' den so we could catch up and I could rest. As we were in there talking, he noticed the cuts on my leg and dried blood on my hands. He asked what happened to me. I told him it was from us fleeing and it was no big deal. Cyrus felt they needed to be tended to despite my resistance. He called in his mother Sorma to come see what she could do. She started examining the wounds, and her eyes got large, and she gasped. She said she has seen these wounds one time before, when a male got caught by a human trap with vines that had thorns on them. She looked me in the eye and asked me to explain what happened. I broke down and told her everything I had done. I was so distraught because my mother was still pretty badly injured, and I worried she would be no more. Sorma said she had to tell the older males what I said. As she left, Cyrus started asking about what the humans were like, and I quickly told him that I wasn't talking about this anymore to him. Within moments, I could hear heavy footsteps coming. I sat up, and as I did, my father's arm reached in the den and grabbed me and pulled me out. He lifted me up by the shoulders and demanded for me to tell him the truth. So I did. Yunan and several other older males were there as I told him what I did. He let me down and struck me in the face and said I was no longer his son. Yunan then said that because I had no regard for the law of the forest and the warnings I had received, that I would be banished immediately, even though I was not 800 moons old. I pleaded with Yunan, but to no avail. I went to Cyrus and begged him to talk with his father, but he refused and stood by his father's decision. That made me so angry. I had been shown mercy other times and cut so much slack that I felt I deserved to be pardoned again. But it wasn't that simple. I vowed to get back at Yunan for throwing me away and not giving me another chance. And I vowed to get back at Cyrus for not sticking up for me as my best friend, but throwing me away just like everyone else. Cyrus tried to reason with me that everything would be okay and why it had to happen, but I was not going to hear any of it. I hit Cyrus and shoved him to the ground and yelled that the next time I see him, I would end him. I then ran away to the mountain of banishment. That's where I have been ever since. I will tell you the rest of my story up to this point very soon. Right now, though, I must rest because tomorrow is a big day. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. I have some exciting news for you if you haven't heard yet. I now offer merchandise like shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, stickers, and much more on my TeePublic store. There is a link in the video description. Here is what some of the items look like. Also, my channel now has the ability to support members. Members will get a shout out like Becky Allen and Thomas Hereford, my first members. The first tier is for support and gives you a cool loyalty badge and custom emojis. The next tier gives you those things, plus early access to new stories. The next tier includes those things I mentioned, plus periodic exclusive members-only ad-free stories. And the final tier gives you all that, plus access to periodic live stream stories, and a random free gift from me. Several exciting things happening, and I love taking all of you on this journey with me. Thank you again, and I'll catch everyone in the next video.